Welcome to Photoshop Tutorials. Today's tutorial is selections using paths. And in this video, we'll be using the pen tool to make a selection, the Paths panel to save and store our path, and to turn it into a live selection. We will then use our selection as a mask to change the background. This will take us into a more advanced way to select an element on a page. And since vector paths do not take up much memory, it's a good alternate to storing the selection as a channel. Channels are made up of black and white pixels, therefore they take more memory to store than vector art. This task allows us to isolate an object, an element in the image, or a product. This is a very common practice in the graphics industry. We can quickly make a complex but accurate selection and use it as a mask. One day you may be asked to drop the background out of 100 product images. It happens, I've done it before, and to do it in the same day. This is a good method. Let's get an image we can work with, and here I have a robot where I took a look at morgue file. You can look at Flickr or other ways of searching. But let's make sure that we have an image that is free from copyright infringement. Okay, I've chose one that actually does have a background. These are good images, but they've already had backgrounds dropped out of them. I chose one that had a little bit of a background on it. Okay, once you choose and download an image, okay, you save it in a place that you want and open it up in Photoshop. Okay, so we start out by using the pen tool. This is my raw image that I have here. And I'm going to open up the Paths panel. Usually channels, paths, and layers are docked together as you see right here. Okay, so I want to click on Paths, and then I also want to use the pen tool, which is right here. Now the pen tool, I'm assuming that you've already done paths and used that tutorial to learn how to use them. But if you need to practice or you need to learn how to use the pen tool, I have a pen tool tutorial in my Adobe Fireworks tutorial playlist. In this tutorial, I'm assuming you've already practiced using the pen tool. But just like other Adobe products, we've got the pen tool, and in Photoshop we do actually have a freeform pen tool, although I like to have the control over it, so I rarely use this. Adding an anchor point and deleting an anchor point, and then converting the point tool. Now what you may not know is some techniques to make it so that our production speeds up. Yes, I can go back and forth between the pen tool, adding anchor points, deleting them, and converting them. But when we get to going into cleaning up our work with the path, I'm going to show you a technique that you just use key commands instead of getting in here and keep on selecting these different ones. So I need the pen tool for now. And then to move the anchor points, we will be using the direct selection tool when we go to clean this up. So initially we use the pen tool, and let's go to our robot, and I'm going to zoom in and get a starting point here. I'm using Command plus, okay, or Control plus on Windows, and you want to have a starting point. I like to start in the corner, and so I'm zooming in quite a bit here. Okay. So as I zoom in and out, I use Control or Command plus and minus to zoom in and out. And then to navigate the system, I use the spacebar key so that I can pan around the image. And again, that speeds up our production, and it doesn't make it so that I have to go and use these scrolling bars for the window. So we use a starting point and set down our anchors, and we just basically, we're going to be moving around the object in one direction. Let me get in here closely. Now you'll notice as I work that there are parts of the photo that are somewhat blurry on the edges, and some areas are hard edge. Watch out, because also in some reflections here, you'll see the background reflected into metal, and so I'm kind of assuming that this goes across. So sometimes you need to assume a few things here. Okay, so I need to either click and drag to get a curve here. And because of some blurry edges, we may go into our selection later once we've got the path down and soften those edges. Now, how do I pick between an edge that it just seems like it's blurry and we're merging into it? We kind of have to go in between where that gradation between one color or one edge and another color area is going to be, in between those, because what happens with photography is that you have different areas of focus, and not everything is going to be in focus. The things that are much closer up or much further away are out of focus, whereas the camera has focused on the main part of the object, okay, and then so foreground and background in front of or in back of where the focus was set, it may make it blurry. So one of the things you're seeing here is I'm not making this perfect. We're going to go back and clean it up later. So do I make it perfect on the first try? No, I recommend against it. Go all the way around, and you may later have to add some anchor points and curves. I like to zoom in and out depending on the detail here. You can see these pixels, so I kind of go in between them. I try to use as few anchor points as possible and use curves to my advantage. Sometimes in the areas where you have smaller details, my anchor point, the curves are much smaller, like you see here. Okay, and contrary to popular belief, a very large, long area like this looks like it's a straight edge. Okay, I usually put at least one curve. You see me clicking and dragging there, and it looks kind of straight, but in reality, again, I've got a reflection between the metal and the background, so I'm kind of assuming that it's straight there. But a lot of times, even something that looks like it is straight, because of maybe distortion with the camera lens or what have you, it may not be exactly straight. Okay, so you'll notice also, I wanted you to see in the paths panel, let's zoom in there, you'll see a work path starting to develop. It's not exactly finished, and it replicates actually what it is that I'm doing as the selection itself with the paths. Okay, and it looks really tiny, but let me see if I can get the thumbnail larger. If you go into the flyout menu of the paths panel, okay, that flyout menu, cancel that, I'm not saving it yet, but you're able to pick the panel options and pick a larger thumbnail size. This might allow you to be able to see exactly what you're working on. Okay, so as I work all the way around, then I'm going to come to and go all the way around the robot, and finally when I get to the very end, okay, let's just put a general thing around here. I want to finish it out because I wanted to show you something. When I go and let's say I'm at the end and I've gone all the way around, then we need to connect that like you see here. You'll see a circle change to the pen icon, so there's a little circle. That means that I can close that circle. Okay. Most often And what we need to make sure of is that we have an ending to this, that we close the path. We don't need a lot of little line segments. It needs to be a closed path in general. Okay, I do have actually a let's see, a finished one that we'll be continuing our work with. But if you want to make a shape on the inside, like as in between the robot's legs, then you can have the outline finished, and then in the inside continue your work. And what's happening here is I've got it so that the shape, I want to exclude the overlapping shapes. And so you'll see it develop here in the work path. And if I put like a hole in here, okay, I'm not being very careful, but you can see here in the work path how that's actually going to be looking here. It's got a hole in it, okay, so, and that is due to my selection here and my options exclude the overlapping shapes. Okay, that's it for this, and we'll continue in another, the next tutorial about how to clean up our robot path. Before we end, we're going to save the work path, save path, okay, in the flyout menu of the path panel. Name it, I usually name it outline. Click OK. Save your work, so you'll save as, and the main point of this is you'll rename your file, robot or whatever it is, outline, product, and save it as a Photoshop native format file. Okay, that's it. We'll see